Hey, I'm Ed Bolian, and welcome back to the VINwiki appraisal panel, where alongside John Tamarian from We Are Curated and John Ficarra from Ficarra Classic, we appraise the car collection of various influencers, YouTubers, and automotive personalities. Gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for being here.
It is an honor to be with you two gentlemen today.
Thanks, Ed. Always a joy to be with you two bloody legends.
Thank you so much. Now, you've seen us appraise Hoovie's cars, Tavarish's cars, and Stradman's cars already. Please let us know in the comments who else you'd like to see have their collections appraised by the three of us. But today, we are going to talk about Shmee's cars. What are the contents of the legendary Shmuseum actually worth? But we couldn't do any of this without the support of ModFind. ModFind is an enthusiast marketplace where you can buy or sell new, used, aftermarket OEM, any parts or accessories, even cars that are related to the automotive hobby. And the best part is you can even offer a kickback to incentivize your followers to share your listings and help bring buyers in. So check out the new ModFind app at the link in the description below and buy or sell the part or accessory for your next project. Of course, we've seen Shmee customize and modify many of his cars, but he has got a phenomenal collection, and right here, right now, we are going to appraise them all. We know that Tim, Shmee, loves his McLarens, and so let's start with his gorgeous purple 675 LT Spider. We know he also had the coupe, but he has kept the Spider for quite a long time, and what I love to see is he drives all of his cars. To be quite honest, I don't know how he finds the time to rack up as many miles as he does, but he's got almost 18,000 miles on this car. It's been to the Nürburgring, on the Autobahn, everywhere around Europe, and it's one of 500 Spiders. Now, those have gone up a lot in the last 18 months, and I think the car's about 325 grand today.
I really appreciate as well that he drives all these things. Of course, that brings the value down a little bit when you put higher mileage on. This car's color is awesome. It's the Prince-mobile. I love it, but I think the higher mileage brings it down to about 315.
I agree with John. I think the mileage hurts it. It's probably one of the highest mileage Spiders I've ever heard of. But then again, the color I think makes up for it. Purple, I'm in love with. I think it's such a great color for any supercar, any exotic. I think the market demands these more rare colors. I put it at 300,000.
Now, he also has another very big McLaren, a hugely impressive and beautifully spec'd Senna. It's a 2019, it's now got about 3,500 miles on it. He's also had it at the Nürburgring, and I believe it was actually the first Senna to complete a timed lap there, although not all that fast. We did unfortunately see the cosmetic incident that the car had. I guess a truck hit the side of it, but it was repaired and certified by the factory, and so they say it is good to go. It's got a lot of MSO carbon in blue. I think it is magnificent, and I think here, even though we did see Senna's dip, I think it's about a $1.2 million car today.
Yeah, this car is really cool. The Sennas are amazing. I'm surprised with the lorry damage, that you didn't try to buy it, Ed. This seems right up your alley, the damaged supercar. Maybe you can make them an offer. But the color's great, the car's beautiful. They are phenomenal machines. They're only gonna go up in value because of the rarity. I put it at 1.25.
I love the Senna. I think it is the modern day F40. When it first came out, people hated the design. A lot of people sort of had their opinion about that. And I think they're just aging so well. They're rare. There's no hybrid here. I love them. That being said, I believe the cosmetic incident, just because everyone knows about it, does affect its value. The rumor was this is a huge MSRP car. I think something like almost 1.4 million. Because of the incident, I'm going to put it at 1.1 million, but again, a stunning, stunning car with incredible spec.
John, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
If the factory goes in and does the work and they put it back exactly the way it was, do you think that brings down the value, or does that bring it right back to where it was?
I think one day, 10, 20 years from now, I don't think it'll matter because the factory did the work. And I think it adds to the story of the car. If Shmee, Tim is a celebrity, and I think, one day it won't matter, and I think it'll help. The story's great. It was done by the factory. But I think today, anyone that's paying over $1 million for a car, I think they have to bump it a little bit on price, even if it was done by the factory.
Very, very good points. Now, it's also worth noting that since we are in the US and a big portion of our audience is from the US, we are numbering these cars as what they would be worth here and now. Obviously, the market moves very fast, and obviously the numbers in the UK where Tim lives can be quite different, but we're trying not necessarily to account for the provenance associated with his ownership, and also to treat them as US cars, even though many of them are obviously right-hand drive UK spec cars. But that becomes pertinent with this car, his Ford GT. He has a gorgeous red with gold stripes Ford GT. He brought it here to the US, in fact, here to my house, and it's just spectacular. It was, in fact, the first Ford GT that I got to drive, and I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I did get kicked off the allocation list for the new Ford GT because they didn't like the Lamborghini prostitute video, but he has the 80th of 80 European cars. And over in Europe, they don't necessarily bring quite as much money because there aren't as many of them. They're not quite as commoditized. But here in the US, a 2018 car would probably do, I think, about 1.1 in a special color, even with the 7,000 miles that the car has.
I think the 1.1 is a little rich, unless you're a San Francisco 49ers fan and you have to have that color combination. I have a hard time valuing anything over $1 million that's got a Raptor truck engine in it and that weighs over 3,000 pounds. So I'm going to put it at 999,999.
So
I think that's right. That's 999,000, right? There we go.
I am not the biggest fan of the new generation Ford GT. I love the 05, 06 car. Personally, I would put my money there. I'd buy 2 05, 06 cars before I bought one 2018. That being said, these cars transact a lot in the US. They're selling at $1 million all day long. I think 7,000 miles is probably a lot of miles for this car. I've never seen one with that many miles. The options are rare. Yes, it is definitely a unique spec. I agree with John on that. But it's one of those things that, you know, there's going to be a buyer for it. I'd put it at $1 million.
Well, there you go. He also has another 2018 Ford, and it is very special, but not something that we got here. It is a Focus RS Heritage. Really cool looking car. It's only got about 5,800 miles. They only made 50 of them over there, and they do bring strong money. I saw a few advertised for sale. They're sort of all over the place, but I think his would bring about 75 grand today.
Wow, that seems like a lot of money for what really is just a used car. It's one of a few, but it's a new car. That doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I mean, I'm sure with some shrewd negotiation, you could find it and buy one of these for $45,000.
I have to agree with John a little bit, but that being said, I do think you're putting it at too low of a number. It is still one of 50. I'm going to put it at $60,000, even though they are all over the place.
And his only, I think, true US spec car, he has a Shelby GT500. Gorgeous carbon fiber track package car. He drove it all around the US. I think he's got some trips planned for it in the US this year. He may be even taking it on Gumball. It's got 9,100 miles on it. They're all bringing well over MSRP. I think it's $110.
Yeah, I think you're real close, Ed. I mean, these things are just nasty. What is it, like 760 horsepower? He's got the carbon wheels. Those things are wicked. And yeah, they're worth every penny over 100 grand. I put it at about 105.
I agree with that. I put it at 110. The market, again, it's like a commodity. They're selling between 100 and 110 depending upon miles, color, and spec.
His next car is the beginning of his Mercedes collection, and he has a 2014 Mercedes SLS Black Series. He obviously loves the Black Series cars, and I think this is one of those cars that anyone who knows and loves the Mercedes brand has known was just about to take off in value. He bought it at exactly the right time and then did exactly what I would have done, but John Tamarian would not have done. He changed the color of it. He painted it from gray to mystic blue, and I think it's gorgeous. It probably wouldn't have been the color I would pick, but I know it is exactly the car that he wants. I think it would bring more in truly original, lower mileage condition. I think he's got about 20,000 miles on that car, but regardless, I think today it's 600,000 US.
Well, you guys know more about these SLSs than I do. I really have never had a lot of experience with them. But 600 grand seems a little rich for my blood with the paint respray, even though it is, I think it's a pretty cool color. I might be completely off base here, but I'd probably put it at 500,000.
You know, I'm in love with these cars. We've owned a few. Again, I really respect him. He's one of the greatest guys in our industry doing this. But how do you change the color of a factory rare grayish charcoal color. I think the blue is beautiful, but this is too rare of a car. I get it, he's enjoying it, he's driving it, but I think he's crazy to change the color. If this wasn't a color change, this car would be worth a lot more. I think today it's worth $600,000.
Now his next Mercedes demonstrates a particularly interesting stroke of irony because it is now painted in solar beam yellow. He was not allowed to order it that color, although he could have rather easily found a solar beam yellow SLS Black Series and then painted this car from the factory Mystic Blue, but he has the new AMG GT Black Series. Shmee was even featured in the unveiling commercial for this car, and so again it's a repaint from matte black to solar beam yellow, which does look spectacular, and they should have allowed him to do, particularly since he was part of the advertising campaign. But those cars are bringing monstrous money over MSRP today in the US. I think it would bring $550,000.
That's strong. Again, repaint. I'm not a huge fan of that color yellow, especially on that car, but you know, I'm never gonna second guess Shmee. That's his thing. But I don't know if it's worth all that money. I'd put it at 505.
You know, these cars are bringing crazy numbers in the U.S. At one point, dealers were asking $700,000, $800,000 for these cars. I think the market has cooled down a little bit on these now that there's more deliveries happening. They're not as rare as a Black Series, so I don't think it hurts it that he repainted it. The fact that he couldn't order that color also sort of helps the story, I guess. He's a celebrity. It's sort of a cool story, and I love solar beam yellow on a Mercedes. I think it just pops so well. I put it at $550,000.
We do know that Shmee loves all versions of the AMG GT. He's had the GTR, GTR Pro, but the one he continues to have is his GT R Roadster. It's one of 750 cars. He's got 6,500 miles on it, and I think today that car brings about $160,000.
I think this car is just fugly. I don't think Chris Bangle could have screwed it up anymore. I'm not a big fan of it, but people seem to like it. They seem to like it enough that really, I think it would pull about 180 on the market in the US today.
I sort of disagree with you, John. I think the car actually looks really tough. I think
You're
it
wrong.
looks great. I think it looks great. You know, with a convertible version, they're more rare than the coupes, obviously. I'm going to put it at more than you guys. I'm going to say $200,000. I think this is a long-term hold for any collector because it's a lot of car for the money. They're rare. And for a convertible experience, it's very cool.
I suppose. He also has another Black Series car, a C63, which is not my personal favorite Black Series. I loved the CLK. And it always boggled my mind how long those cars sat at about $60,000, $75,000. And now they've gone up. You're going to pay $125 or whatever it is for one. I put this car with its 20,500 miles, being one of 800 cars, right at $100,000. There are some market comps higher than that, but honestly, I think that's what the car ought to be worth today in the US.
I think these cars are super cool. These are just really, I'm going to say nasty again, but it's a nasty little car, makes a nasty little sound. I think it's one of the greatest arguments against electric cars, if you've ever driven one of these. Just all the sounds and the feeling, and I think they're cool. That being said, I was offered one at $75,000, and maybe I should have bought it from what you're saying, Ed. So I was putting it at $75,000.
I respect you guys so much, but you guys are so off the radar on these cars. These cars have gone up overnight. We just sold one recently, and I think it sold for around $160,000 or $170,000. It was a low mileage car. The suspension and the brakes on these cars are perfect. It literally is like driving a race car for the street. And I know a lot of brands say, oh, it's like a race car for the street. This car is a race car for the street. It sounds great. It's fast. It's the exact opposite of the future of the automotive industry, going to hybrid, you know, smaller displacement engines. This is the end of the line. They're rare. I love it. I'm going to put this, just because of the miles, I'm going to put this car at $150,000. If it was lower miles, I'd say it could do $175,000, maybe $180,000.
Wow, I should have bought that car.
You should have
went out and bought that car.
You should have bought that car, and you could have doubled your money selling it to me.
Oh my goodness. Now this next car is really interesting to me. It's a 2017 Aston Martin Vantage GT8. Now this is an edition that we didn't get here in the US. His is a fairly unique spec, very much the University of Florida orange and blue, but I suppose it's to his taste. He has a lot of two-tone cars and things of that nature. So I didn't know much, honestly, about what these cars were bringing. But in a quick survey of the classified listing sites over there, I think the car's 200 grand US.
Yeah, these are really cool track-focused cars. It kind of reminds me of like a British version of the GT500. It's kind of a stripped-down, track-only, kind of nasty little car. I keep saying nasty, don't I? Shmee, you got a lot of nasty cars. You know, those cars sold out real quick, and there's none in the U.S. If it came here, I think you could get $210,000 for it.
I will say, I love the way Astons look. I'm not the biggest fan of them in general. I don't know much about them. I've always wanted like a DBS manual or something like that. I don't really get these cars, but I think the market's right around 200,000. But I'm not the biggest Aston fan.
Well, of the Astons out there, I know that we do all love the DBS. He recently acquired one of the few used cars that Shmee's ever bought, but this car does have the automatic transmission. A very good transmission, not a single clutch sequential or a double clutch, a real torque converter ZF automatic, so they are really good, reliable cars, but that does keep the value down rather significantly. I put that one at 90 grand.
Yeah, this is the perfect car for Meemaw or Peepaw to drive around in their retirement in Palm Springs. Shmee, I really wish this was a 1971 DBS because I'd be a huge fan of you at this point. That's the car I'd buy for the money. But I agree with you, Ed. It's about a $90,000 car.
I agree with you, John. This doesn't match the rest of his collection at all. You know, with all respect, I'm gonna agree with you guys. $90,000.
Now, he recently bought back his first exotic car, his 2009 Aston Martin V8 Vantage Roadster. Now, these are wonderful entry first exotics, and I don't think anybody is going terribly wrong by going the Doug DeMuro route of making it your first exotic car, but I don't know that it brings all that much money today. I think I'm being a little bit generous saying 60 grand.
I agree. You are being generous. I'm saying 50 grand.
I think these cars are great. First exotic for somebody, fun car. They sound incredible, but they are very slow. So I'm going to put it at 60,000.
Now, Shmee just got a 2022 Ferrari SF90 Stradale. Obviously a phenomenal hybridized performance car, as fast as anything they've ever built. His has 3,700 miles. Now in the US, they bring a little bit more than they do in Europe, where I think the car would probably struggle to find 500 grand. But I think here in the US, the car could bring, in a non-red color, 800,000 bucks.
Yeah, these are really exceptional cars with 986 horsepower, and it's got electric motors, and it's got all kinds of cool things going for it. Future collectible, cool car. I'm gonna bump it down just a little bit because of the amount of them and the mileage to 750.
John, I respect you, but calling this a future collectible is almost insane. This is a production car. I mean, this is a production car that has great technology, blah, blah, blah. I don't even think they've figured out the hybrid system perfectly yet. I don't get why they bring so much over sticker, even though they are an incredible car. They do everything right. They're fast, they're comfortable, blah, blah, blah. I just see this as a nightmare over, owning a pre-owned SF90 is a nightmare, but I'm going to put it at 600,000 and disagree with both of you.
Next, he has what I personally think is the ultimate road trip exotic, his 2017 Ferrari GT4Lusso. I love the front engine 2+2 Ferraris. They always are a little bit unloved, and they're sometimes cars you can get a great deal on. I think this one's worth about $225 today in the US. It's got about 17,000 miles, a gorgeous shade of blue, and just a great car to rack up some miles on the way that he does.
I love these cars because they came after the FF, and I thought the FF was brilliant. I wish they came in a manual stick shift transmission, or I'd be driving that every day, just as Shmee drives it. He's got a lot of mileage on it. Really cool cars. I think they're an acquired taste, but that is right up my alley. I think that car's worth about 200,000.
I think these cars are just so special. They remind me of sort of like the coach-built, interesting Ferraris from the 60s, and then you've got the V12 front engine on some of the Lussos. They're a blast to drive. They're fast. They're comfortable. All the gadgets work. I would buy one if I could right now, but I put it at 200,000.
Well, Shmee finally bought his first Lamborghini. I'd been telling him to do so for quite some time, but he bought a brand new Huracan STO. Of course, we're now over 20,000 units into the run of the Huracan compared to the 14,000 Gallardos that they built, which was over as many cars as they built prior as a brand. So I do hate that they're not as rare as we would like Lamborghinis to be, but it is a fantastic shade of fuchsia, now with yellow accents that he added in an aftermarket way, which obviously he has no qualms with. He has driven it a good bit, taken it to the ring. It's got 4,000 miles on it. I think in the US it's a $525,000 car as it is.
You know so much about these, Ed. I have nothing to add to that, so I have nothing to add to the price. So I think $525.
You know, I'm going to say a little bit more, you know, talking about modern, you know, collectibles or future collectibles. I think the STO has it. It's based, you know, on their radical, you know, Super Trofeo Evo race car, which is completely phenomenal. I have not driven an STO yet, but when I recently drove a Performante, it's the first time that I fell in love with a modern car in a long time. It felt like, you know, almost as radical as a Carrera GT. I think these cars are phenomenal. I can't wait to drive an STO. So I'm going to put this at $550.
He's got a new decoration for the Shmuseum, a 1997 Williams F1 car, the FW19, the replica or the show car of the last time Williams won an F1 championship. Of course, these are all over the place. I think you could buy something like that for 50 grand. I don't know what he paid. I don't think it has any powertrain or drivetrain whatsoever, but it certainly looks really, really cool to have laying around.
It was an exceptional car. So my understanding of this was like a spare tub they turned into a show car and they put different pieces on it. So it's a real bitsa car. But you know, a vintage Formula One car like Nigel Mansell's cars just sold last weekend for $3 or $4 million. Can go for a lot of money. There's no way he's putting this back into a functional F1 car without spending a ton of money. So it's a wall decoration. And it's not even been confirmed, as far as I know, that it's a real car. So I'd put it at like 40 grand as hanging on the wall with all the wrong pieces on it. Put it back to its Rothmans livery in that period. Get Williams to stamp it and sign off that it's a real one. Then I would probably go from my $40,000 price to 120. But before anything is proved, I'd say 40 grand.
So I agree with you, John. I think he should get Williams to sign off on it. I think there's a whole new fascination with Formula One, especially in the US with the new tracks here in Miami and Vegas. You look at the recent transactions like the Mansell cars. We recently purchased 2 Ferrari Formula One cars, and the numbers of Formula One cars have exploded. I mean, we're talking, you know, almost double what they were bringing a few years ago. I have a ton of collectors asking me for Formula One cars, and I think there's a new respect, you know, for Formula One cars in general, and it's a worldwide sort of fascination. Netflix series, all these different things. It's like the perfect storm for Formula One today. I'm going to put it at 100,000. If it really is, was a tub that was then converted into a show car, I think it's so cool, and he should document it the right way.
He also just bought back his first car. He's got a 2005 Renault Clio 1.2 Dynamique. It's got 60,000 miles on it. It is just a car, but you know, today any just a car on Facebook Marketplace seems to bring about 5,000 bucks.
You know, to me, this is just a used hot hatch. You know, I understand it. So I'd put it at £1,000, which I think right now is trading at $1,263.
You know, I don't know the used car market in Europe, but I agree with Ed. I think at least in the U.S., any working operational car on Facebook Marketplace is going to sell for just around $5,000. I put $5,000.
Now, Shmee just bought another brand new car, and it is the last Lotus Elise, which I think is just super cool. I love the Elise and Exige platform. It's a fantastic shade of orangish red, and it's the final chassis. It's called Luminous Orange. He just took delivery of it, and I think it's so special and such the perfect car to go alongside of a lot of his other significant cars. I don't know exactly what the MSRP was, but I think today it's about 110 grand.
It's a special car. It's a beautiful car. It's the last chassis. I don't know what the last chassis does for you unless it's the first and last chassis of a Cobra or the last Mustang ever built or whatever. But I don't know how much value that adds. You can get these cars for 70, 75,000. So I think that might bump it up now to 90. That might go up in the future as it becomes rarer and rarer. But as a used car right now, about 90 grand.
Even with the historical Lotus cars, there's not a lot of Lotus collectors that are willing to pay a lot of money for significant cars. I was actually looking at the Esprit Turbo V8. I think it was the last car built. And it wasn't like that expensive of a car. So I'm going to still put it at $100,000. But I agree with you that it doesn't really matter too much that it's the final chassis, but it's a beautiful car. And these are great cars and fun, track day and drive home cars.
Now, the next new car to join the Shmuseum after the Elise Cup 250 is going to be, in just a couple of weeks, his Zenvo TSR-S. Now, I don't know anything about what it will be like to drive a Zenvo. They've barely built any cars. His is a fantastic shade of purple with some green accents, as I understand it. Now, in the US, there's going to be about a $2 million MSRP based on the options that he is configuring. Now, I have no clue if they've even achieved the required bits for show and display titling of these cars. I don't think any are necessarily or imminently destined for US shores, but my thought is that given the customization, given the fact that you could certainly call them and order one to have whenever they could get around to building it, it's not going to bring MSRP, so I'm going to call it $1.5 million US.
Yeah, this is a real oddball. I mean, I'm usually in the weeds with supercars when it comes to like only making 5 cars a year. This is strange. I mean, it's the Hamlet hypercar built by Vikings. So it's got over 1,000 horsepower. It's got that insane rear wing, which really appeals to me in a lot of ways. But they have made cars already that aren't selling for as much as what they made them for. I don't see any kind of upswing in this immediately. I think it's immediately going to go down. I think I put it at 1.6.
So I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I definitely had to Google a little bit more about the brand. It's a Danish brand. They say they've made about 15 cars since 2009, which is not a lot of cars at all. I think it's cool. It's different. It's definitely an acquired taste. My gut, without offending anyone, is probably 500,000, 600,000 back of MSRP. So I'm going to put it at about 1.4 million.
Oh man, the Vikings are coming for you, John.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you both. That is an amazing collection of cars. By my math, I was just shy of 7.8 million. Fakara, you were a little over 7.5, and Tamarian just over 7.3. Now, of course, given the significance that Shmee's had in the automotive industry, the provenance that previous ownership from him adds to these cars, for sure, in open market transactions, there's $8 million worth of cars in that Shmuseum. And for somebody who started just chasing cars around London, car spotting, really showing us what was possible on the YouTube platform, I am so proud of Tim and everything that he's achieved for himself.
Yeah, Tim's made an incredible collection of cars that are untouchable to most of us, and he gives us a really kind of nice common man's access to what they are and his, interpretations of them. My only problem with Shmee is that he should really kind of vary this thing up. It's just all supercars. Give me a few classic cars. Throw a dog a bone, all right? So on these videos, I can actually talk about some classic cars.
Tim is the man. I've had the opportunity to work with him a few times, and he's such a humble, sweet guy. Again, Ed, you said it, you got to be so proud of him. He started with a Vantage Roadster, and now he has this incredible collection of cars. He actually, John, I'll make a good point. He's actually talked about the future of collecting with being some classic cars and talking about the next generation that will love these end-of-a-generation cars like an 054 GT that we spoke about earlier. So he's got to be, he's got great taste. I love the colors, and I think one day there'll be thousands or hundreds of collectors that would love to chase any one of his wacky livery supercars that he drove, enjoyed, and maybe even guys that followed their story from A to Z. You know, he documents everything so well. So it definitely makes the cars even more appealing to have that, you know, sort of set in stone. So definitely congratulations to Shmee again. Incredible collection.
He's always the most excited man on the YouTube screen, and that is absolutely genuine. He loves cars even more than any of us do, but it's been a tremendous honor to dive into his collection and appraise them today. Again, thank you so much to ModFind for their support of this appraisal series. Be sure to check out their newly redesigned and redeployed app to buy or sell your next car part or accessory. Offer a kickback and get your followers on board with helping you find the next buyer. Thank you to both of the Johns for joining me today, and we'll be back soon with another appraisal.